Hey folks, this is Kalani. I want to talk to you about some of the cries of a Crusader. Now, essentially, some of the issues that people come across while playing Crusaders, and a few ways to either combat it, or why it's either necessary, or some ways in which we could have fixes or upgrades or buffs to kind of get rid of the issue, or at least help with the issue. So the first thing I want to talk about is movement speed. Now, as a quick note, if you're unaware and you think there's some strange interaction, you actually run at your maximum movement speed in town, so things like Heavenly Strength are not applied. So let's go out of town. Now obviously the main cause for this movement decrease is Heavenly Strength. Heavenly Strength being the passive, which caps your maximum movement speed at 15%. Now, it does say it reduces it by 15%, but it's your maximum movement speed, and the default maximum movement speed is 125, meaning that your max movement speed then becomes 110. So stacking more movement speed over 110 isn't going to help you at all with Heavenly Strength. It can be really frustrating at times because you're going to run fairly slow. Now, one of the ways in which you can essentially get rid of this debuff actually is Hellskull Shield. Now this is a legendary Crusader shield, which, as I said, Heavenly Strength no longer reduces your movement speed, which is fantastic. You get your old base back at 125. Now the issue with that is that it's taking your shield slot, and it's not really giving you anything build defining. While it is incredibly nice, and I can happily run around like a normal person instead of feeling incredibly slow, it does kind of cut your build options. For example, you wouldn't be able to use this with any shield with a Thorns build because there's nicer shields, let's be honest. You don't have the choice of elemental damage like you do with a Lidless. You don't get any other affix, you don't get any other legendary or set shield. So it works in some builds, and it obviously will hamper others, which is really frustrating. But the other way to tackle movement speed is with Steed Charge. Now, Steed Charge is probably one of the most lackluster of the movement skills, let's say that. For example, Dashing Strike and Teleport, it's teleporting. Dashing Strike specifically is on a very low cooldown, so it's kind of annoying to then have Steed Charge. The cooldown's okay, the duration could be better. 2 seconds while ruined, note. It gets you, it gets you a screen or so across, which is probably about the same as teleport without wormhole. But I'd definitely say the other movement skills have way stronger runes, I really do. You can drag monsters behind you and deal a bit of damage. It's fun, but not that amazing. 10% maximum life. You scorch the floor, but it's only lasting for 1.5 seconds, and the scorch doesn't really last all that much longer. Not really that useful. It's also fire damage. Creating a fire Crusader is possible, but not overly ideal, meaning that the damage is still going to be subpar, and then you got ramming speed. Now, note that ramming speed and nightmare are the only ones which will allow you to break through objects. But I still missed stuff. It's kind of annoying. It doesn't really pulse the damage like it could. If it pulsed the damage better and a lot faster, then I think that would be a lot more useful, especially for breaking through barricades. But the most annoying thing about it is, for a movement skill, it won't save me from Frozen, and it won't save me from Waller. If I get walled into a corner, I can't ride out. Half the time it won't even ride properly through minions. That's probably because of my mouse interaction, but at the end of the day, the other movement skills are still better, which is why a lot of people don't actually run with it anymore. But, I mean, if you're really that bothered with the movement speed, that's one way to think about it. After all, if you're running slow, you're clearing slow, and clearing slow is bad for efficiency. Now, what I want to touch on next is damage. I've seen quite a few Crusaders complaining about their damage, and that kind of confuses me, because I'm more concerned about the one that comes after the damage, which is how squishy you are. But it really depends on your build with both of this, and it depends on what you're stacking in your stats. For example, for me, I've got a lot of damage. I've got my lightning skills damage, I've got strength, crit chance and crit damage wherever possible, except this one. For example, here I'm going to drop 100 resist all to get hopefully 100% crit damage, meaning my toughness is going to go down further, but my damage will soar. Now, if it's a stat allocation issue, what you want to be looking for on a Crusader is strength, crit hit chance, crit hit damage, and depending on your build, cooldown reduction. Now, if you're running a strange Crusader build which actually benefits from attack speed more than cooldown reduction, then you want to run with attack speed, although that would be a very strange build indeed. Crusaders definitely seem to be built around cooldowns if nothing else, so that may be an issue with your build itself if you're feeling your damage is very lackluster. For example, if you're using something like Punish, you want the rest of your build to complement Punish. So you're running with blocks, which means you want thorns, you want people to hit you, and essentially you want to be in melee. So something like hammers, because they're mostly melee orientated. You can run Shield Bash, although you probably get annoyed with it very quickly because of how it works. Heaven's Fury is always a great choice. But again, it depends on what you're running with, because if I was running a Punish build, I would probably run Punish with Raw because of the AoE damage, and then take Provoke for more AoE damage, take Blessed Fury, Blessed Ground in Heaven's Fury rather, again, more AoE damage, and then for a spender, either Blessed Hammer, maybe Blessed Shield, or Fist of the Heavens, but then you're poking more into a ranged build anyway, because of how all of these interact with each other. If you're playing a melee Crusader, you might want to have a look at some other builds, because it definitely seems to be the ranged, almost wizard-like Crusader builds are performing a lot better, even though they're going to die a lot faster, which is really annoying and kind of ironic for what Crusader's supposed to be. But it's just strange to think that we have so few true melee abilities which excel. I mean, you've got Falling Sword. I haven't seen a build use Falling Sword in a very long time. You've got Bombardment, ranged, Heaven's Fury, ranged, Akarat's Champion, cooldown. You've got 2 melee primaries, both of which aren't that great. Shield Bash is such a pain in the butt to aim, it really is. And then, even if you have all of the runes at once, it still gets outperformed by some of the other secondaries. Sweep Attack is very melee orientated, but you're going to have no ranged abilities to chase things down. With the movement speed kind of coupling into that, it becomes a real nuisance to chase things like goblins. It really does. You got Blessed Hammers, which still doing pretty well, but I think Blessed Shield and Fist of the Heavens definitely take the cake for secondary. Both of them are ranged. You've got a nice amount of crowd control. You've got a nice amount of buffs if you're running with party members, such as Judgment and Resolve to let everybody crit, Shield Glare and Divine Verdict. Everybody does 20% more damage. You can run Iron Skin, but that pushes you further into a Thorns build, which is actually kind of subpar right now due to the change to Iron Maiden. That was kind of broken and hilarious when it scaled with Torment, but they're changing it. So Iron Maiden is actually being changed, and we're being encouraged not to build around Iron Maiden because it will be changed. So Thorns builds sort of get pushed out as well, meaning you're left with this kind of lightning build, which is fantastic, or a holy build with Heaven's Fury and Fires of Heaven if you're running Fate of the Fell. There's a few other. You've got holy builds with Fist of Heavens, Divine Well and Condemn. It just depends on your build. As I say, if you're trying to play a melee Crusader, try playing a ranged, see how you like it, see what the damage is like. The damage may be considerably higher, but it might not be how you want to play Crusader, which is obviously going to be a bit of an issue. So the last thing to touch on is looking for your stats again. So the best thing you can do here, if you're happy with all the stats on your gear, for example, you've got the crit hit damage, you've got the crit hit chance, you've got the strength, then start to look for Vitality and All Resist. Bear in mind that All Resist can do you far more favours than Vitality can when you get to a certain point, even though Vitality will actually increase your toughness quite a bit more. But All Resist reduces all the damage you're going to take, whereas Vitality just increases the health pool they have to chunk you down. Which also works into healing, because if you stack Vitality and have low healing, they're chunking off a lot more health, which you can't heal back. So if you heal 10k per second, and you have 100k life, 10 seconds to get to 100k. Now if you bump that up to 200k, but you're taking twice the damage due to all resistances being halved, then you're taking a lot more damage than you can heal. So it's 20 seconds to get you back to full health, but the monsters are dealing damage in higher increments, if that makes sense. So All Resist can actually be a lot stronger than Vitality, and it can be a lot stronger than Strength, especially in sockets, but only if you're dying a lot. For example, I don't really want the Strength in my sockets because I desperately need the All Resist because of how much I've sacrificed on my gear. So I throw All Resist into my sockets, even though the gems need to be upgraded, but we need a bit more gold for that. So just have a look-see around if you're either doing subpar damage, what you feel, or you're dying too fast. Now, the very last thing to look at there is difficulty. If you're trying a difficulty higher than you can handle or safely manage, you're obviously going to die and you're going to feel like you're not doing a great deal of damage. So I'd recommend gearing up first, if that is an issue. If you're wondering about gearing up, I'd throw yourself into normal bounties until you can handle Torment 1 very comfortably. Then grind yourself some rifts. That's kind of the only real way to do it. If you pick up some sets, go ahead and craft some of those. If you're really lucky, you can get a Royal Ring of Grandeur from Act 1, which is a really, really, really overpowered ring when it comes down to the baseline for it, because it reduces the amount of set items you need by 1 for set bonuses. So you get 2 pieces and suddenly you've got 3 set bonuses all across your character, which is fantastic, and I really want that ring. But one last thing to discuss is build variety. So you have a few tools which you can use to great effect. One of these is Phalanx and Bowmen. Phalanx and Bowmen is probably our strongest single target damage ability, and it's also really good for clearing out rooms of small monsters, because they happily snipe off anything which is running away, and they can do a lot of damage if you're geared for it. Now, another is Provoke. If you're playing a lightning build, you have to use Provoke and Charged Up. More or less guaranteed. So, essentially what this does is take every source of damage you have and then add damage on top of it, which means you can melt stuff really quickly. Really, really quickly. Obviously, we've got things like Bombardment, which just still hit like a truck. We've got Condemn, which is actually less attractive, I guess you can say now, due to the nerf to Blade of Prophecy. It can now only trigger twice on the blade, meaning that the potential damage for Condemn and Blade of Prophecy actually sinks quite far. But have a look-see at some of your legendaries, because some legendaries can change your builds in fantastic ways. Get yourself a Gaia Falcon's Foot and a Jack and Board. You don't even need the Jack and Board really, but get yourself one of those and you can completely replace your primary and spender with Blessed Shield. Blessed Shield takes the 1 slot and hits like a truck. Blessed Shield with Shattering Throw clears out monsters like nothing else on a Crusader, especially if you get that shield. So there are a few builds out there. The only issue with a Crusader is that you definitely need the legendary first. For example, running a Blessed Shield build without a Gaia Falcon's Foot is pretty bad. It does damage, don't get me wrong, but when you get that Gaia Falcon's Foot, you will melt things ridiculously, because you don't have to stop casting it. That's the beauty. Obviously that means that Crusaders are a little weaker without these specific legendaries, but if you manage to get your hands on one, you will never go back to anything else, if you can work around the movement speed thing. So, there's just a few things that I wanted to kind of get out there, because I get these questions quite a lot for Crusaders. So, yeah, there's my thoughts on some of the issues with Crusaders, although The movement is still really annoying. Whenever I play my wizard and I'm teleporting all over the place, I'm teleporting out of danger, it feels good. But on the other hand, my Crusader definitely has more potential damage. Definitely. The only issue that I still have is that it clears pretty slow. So if we can get a change to either speed charge or maybe some built-in movement speed somewhere else, that could be really nice. That really could be fantastic. But that's all I want to talk about in this video. That already dragged on a little bit longer than I hoped. So remember to leave a like just below the video, and if you want to see more, feel free to subscribe. But apart from that, thanks for watching, folks. Good luck and have fun, and as always, I will see you next time.